Really good now.
Okay, good. So I'd like to begin by welcoming everybody here to the event that we're having this evening. We've had our club meeting, and we'll continue with portions of that, like eating donuts, drinking coffee, while we're listening to the presentations. First, I'd like to say thank you to all of you in Zoom land who've tuned in tonight, and those who braved the wilds to join us here in Traverse City. Tonight, besides the members of the Cherryland Amateur Radio Club, we've been joined by the Axarben Amateur Radio Club in Omaha, Nebraska. Greetings to Pat Connell, W0OJU, president of AXARBEN-ARC. And we had a special welcome to Kurt Black, W5RG, WR5G, president of the West Seattle Amateur Radio Club. Mike Folker, KC7V, past president of the Arizona Outlaws Contest Club. And a very, very special welcome to Ishmael Harding, EL2BG, president of the Liberia Radio Amateur Association in Bushrod Island, Liberia, on the coast of Africa. So welcome to all of you. And in addition, we welcome Lance's colleagues and many of the people who will be working W7GJ tonight from over 10 countries, welcoming our friends from Canada, Mexico, Australia, Liberia, England, Scotland, Italy, Hungary, Finland, and Norway. And welcome to the Traverse City, Michigan. And now to introduce our guest. So I'm pleased to be able to announce and introduce you tonight, guest speaker. He's a real doer. He's not just a speaker, but a doer who will give us tonight a real experience in 6-meter DX. We're starting planning this evening. We started planning this evening last September. This coming September, Lance Collister, W7JG, JG will celebrate ALS on 2-meter AM with a Heathkit tour. And from that first contact, he was hooked on VHF DXing and soon became active on 2-meter Meteor Scatter and Aurora. And after earning his bachelor's degree at Middlebury College in Vermont, Lance copied his first 2-meter EME signal in 1974 and wrote his first moon tracking computer program that same year. In 1978, he completed his first 2-meter EME contact and has been doing so ever since. Lance moved from Vermont to Frenchtown, Montana in 1983, where he gained notoriety in the worldwide amateur radio community by being the first civilian to contact a space vehicle using his 2-meter EME array to complete a contact with astronaut W5 LFL, Owen Garriott, aboard the shuttle STS-9. He also took first place worldwide on a 2-meter in the ARL International EME competition that same year. Between now and then, Lance has continued to rack up achievement on top of achievements. His very long list of impressive victories in contests, achievements, achievement awards, and awards presented by organizations across the country for his work with others in EME will need to be the subject of another 1-hour Zoom call. But for example, the ARL has recognized Lance for having made 14 6-meter firsts from USA to other DXCC countries. In addition, Lance has published numerous articles and guidelines on computer programs to assist operators around the world in successfully operating EME. Following his retirement in 2007, Lance has made 6-meter EME de-expeditions to more than 13 exotic islands and rare EME locations. You can see his QRZ page for a list of the countries and some really beautiful QSL cards from those de-expeditions. Lance demonstrates the ability to move technical developments forward and successfully use new modes to capitalize on the propagation opportunities available for 6 meters. More information about his 6-meter weak signal work, trips to active rare countries, and his free GJ tracker moon tracking program, you can go to bigskyspaces.com or just Google W7GJ. Now we turn the program over to Lance, W7GJ, to show us how it's done. Go ahead, you can start sharing your screen, Lance, and W7GJ from W8TCM, Cherryland Amateur Radio Club in Traverse City. Go ahead, and we're glad you're here.
Thank you very much, Scott. Let me see what I can do here. The host has disabled my participant screen sharing. So as soon as I can share my screen, I will. Here we go. All right, and this should work. Can everybody see my screen? Did it come across?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, what I've got here is I'm running the new Q65. I don't know if there's any room in the waiting room. I see that G8BCG is trying to check into the Zoom conference. What I'm running here right now is the new Q65 mode that's in the latest version of WSJTX. And this is the most sensitive mode yet for EME. And it's tailored specifically for EME. It started out with the microwave bands in mind, but K1JT has really gone overboard to make it work for pile-up use on VHF de-expeditions. So I'm just thrilled with that. And the release candidate 3 right now is what I'm running. Release candidate 4 will even be better for handling pile-ups. So without further ado, I'll just call CQ. You can see here. Can you see where I'm circling on with my cursor? There are lots of it's decoding lots of CQs from HB9Q right at the moment. He's calling.
We're seeing your
just
chat
below
page.
where I'm. Oh, you're seeing the chat page too with the ON4KST chat page. I'll announce there that I'm going to start calling CQ, and we'll see if anybody can hear me. So let's enable transmit here.
We're not seeing your program. We're not seeing WSJTX.
You're not seeing my screen?
No, we're
Just
seeing
your
chat.
web browser.
Just your chat web browser.
Yeah, you should be, Lance. There should be a option
Let me,
to share your entire screen.
Yep, there is a way to do that. Let's see here. How's that? Can
There
you
you
see
go.
my whole screen now?
There we go.
Now we can.
Okay. So I have the web browser just down in the lower left-hand corner, and I have the 3 screens for Q65. The main screen is in the lower right. The waterfall is up above, and the astronomical data is in the upper left. And that shows me where my moon is. And so I'll be leaning over from time to time because I have an old-fashioned station here. And I'm doing everything manually. So I'll have to be keeping the antenna on the moon. So I'm calling CQ, and we'll see if there's anybody that comes back to me. Now, one of the features about Q65 is you see these orange and red lines along the bottom of the waterfall. Those spikes will show where there are callers. And I see actually the sync line of a caller right now. Up here, if you can see where my cursor is moving, right up at here on 1937 or so. We'll see who it was. Yep, it was G8BCG. So I'm going to call him. He's calling me with a report. I'm calling him with a Roger and his report. You can see that here on my screen. Do you see where that's been selected actually automatically for me? And there are a couple other callers here too, I see. Let me just decode it once more. See this orange spike here is another caller on 1200 hertz. So the moon is about 250,000 miles away, and it takes 2.5 seconds to go round trip, which is 500,000 miles. So it's the ultimate long path. Signals are very, very weak, which is why we use this weak signal mode.
How much power are you running, Lance?
I'm running 1,500 watts, and I've got 4 50-foot Yagis spaced in a bay about 32 feet by 32 feet. Okay, there's the Roger 73 from Peter in England. We'll log him. I'm using TRX Manager for my logger. Okay, he's in the log. And this next station I'm going to call is K9RX, who we've seen calling here. And G8 BCG says in the chat that his antenna is not on the moon. But it was certainly good enough. Here you go, Peter. That was your 73. Thank you very much. During a de-expedition, I very rarely call CQ because there are so many people calling that most of my time is just spent answering individual stations. I hate to call CQ if I don't have to, because it wastes valuable moon time. And a lot of these stations, especially in Europe, are horizon only. So they only have like an hour of moon time. Well, K9RX did not reply to us, so let's go back to OH2BC. You can see a number of stations calling. Here, there's one here too, and one here. I'll press the decode again, and you can see the orange spikes where there are callers.
Exactly what does the decode button do?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
What does the decode button do?
The decode button, at the end of each receive sequence, the program itself decodes the entire bandpass to see if there are callers. But at first, it decodes where you have the cursor set. And I have mine set right now on OH2BC. Right here, you can see where my cursor is. It's where the little green bars are. And then after that, it decodes the entire bandpass here to see if there are any other stations that it can decode. But at any time, I can also press the decode on any of these stations to see who they might be. The reason I'm calling OH2BC is that he is one of the 3 people in the world that has cross-polarized Yagis. So I'm pretty confident he'll hear me right away, and he did. I'm sending him Rogers. You can see the program received R-20 in response to my sending him our signal report. So I'm sending him Rogers, and as soon as I get 73s from him, I'll move on to the next station. Obviously, N0TB is copying me. I can see that because he's sending me a signal report. I've told everyone in my de-expedition. I've told everybody in my de-expedition procedure that I would like everybody to if they're copying me right then, to send me a signal report. Otherwise, just plain call me. And because on 6 meters, often because of the Faraday rotation changing the polarization of the signals are often not reciprocal. You may have heard people talk about one-way propagation. We have that a lot on 6 meter EME because the signals may come back at right angles to your antenna. So we have to wait for them to turn around so that people can exchange reports and work through a contact. There's quite a bit of a advantage to people like HB9Q and OH2BC that have cross-polarized Yagis because the polarization rotation makes no difference for them. They can copy no matter what. So I'm sure this time we'll get 73s from OH2BC when it decodes. Oh, I don't see that. I don't know why it went back to that. Let me just make sure I'm still sending him.
He messed up. He sent his grid again accidentally.
You can see he's still sending me reports. Of course, I could be off the moon too. I might get carried away, so I've got to pay attention to where the moon is and move the antenna. I'm not like these modern stations that are just getting on 6 meter EME that have auto tracking and everything from the green heron controllers and so on.
Are you using a camera? Do you have a camera mounted on the boom and that's how you're aiming, or?
No, I've never used a camera. I don't like that because sometimes it's cloudy or the moon is too close to the sun, and I've got very rude and crude 3-turn pot for my azimuth and elevation.
So you're just matching what the astronomical is telling you. Basically.
The astronomical data that's exactly right. It's telling me where the moon is right now, and I'm moving the motors to turn the antenna and to elevate it to match this the directions that are given to me by the program. Oh, I guess we got the 73 from Kerry. So let's log him. He's in the log. You can see it here. And let's go on and call reply to K9RX, who's copying right now. And he's got a very good signal. K9RX has 4 7-element LFA Yagis. I think he's located in North Carolina or someplace out that way. EM84, wherever that is. I guess that's South Carolina or Georgia.
Is this mode only for 6 meters, or will the guys on 2 meters and up also be using it?
You know, one of the interesting things that I've tried is this Q65. You can see there are a number of different modes. If you look down here, where I don't know if you can see my cursor, but
Yes.
there are lots of sub modes here, and A is the most sensitive and narrowest mode. Up on microwave, they use wider modes, and they're not as sensitive, but they're still very, very sensitive. Let's say here's the K9RX is sending Roger, so I'm sending him 73s. We'll log him. So I have used Q65A, which is this same mode, the most sensitive version of it, on 2 meter EME, and it works well there too. So it's a step up from the old JT65B, which was used on 2 meter EME. The only problem on 2 meters is that there are a few stations that tend to drift a little bit, and if their signal isn't really pretty steady, the Q65A won't decode them. I'm sure Q65B would, but you lose I don't know exactly how much. It's probably around 1 dB. So on 6 meters, though, it's not a problem with most stations. Oh, there seem to be quite a few callers here. Let's call I4YRW because his moon is setting pretty soon. He's calling with a report, so I know that he's copying me. And I'm still a little ahead of the moon. I'm about a degree above it and a degree ahead of it. So,
Lance, what mode of operation is this again?
this is Q65-60A. Now that the 60A means that it's 60 seconds, and A means that it's the sub mode A. It's the narrowest mode of Q65. I have run Q65-120A, which is a 2-minute sequence with some very, very small stations, and it works great. I mean, in theory, you get another 3 dB from receiving their signals for another 60 seconds, for twice as long. However, on 6 meter EME, it's rare that the signal continues for the entire sequence. If you can, I don't know how well this is coming across on your screen, but if you look up here at, this was K9RX a few minutes ago, you can see him sending, when he was sending 73s, you see it's not a solid trace. It's more like Morse code. It's spotty. And that's why we don't get usually a full 3 dB gain when we go for another sequence on 6 meters, is because there's so much going on 6 meters. It's probably the worst band for EME. any kind of geomagnetic aberration can really throw the signals off course. And so it's, and there's 73 from Italy, so we'll log him. Whoops, wrong button. So there are lots of things that can interfere with the signals and cause them to not be solid transmissions. Who else was calling here? N3XX was calling. We'll reply to him next. I've actually seen the QSB be so much on 6 meter EME that it looks like somebody is sending slow CW going da, 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 just signals going up and disappearing like in more than 10 or 15 dB difference, just within a second or two. I mean, it's really fast. And the guys up on 1296 just laugh because they don't have that kind of problem. But on 6 meters, almost everybody in the world has a rig that will work on 6 meters. And so there are lots of stations. And at least for a week, a month, we have good enough conditions that you can work 6 meter EME. Now, one of the problems with 6 meters also is that the sky temperature, the sky noise behind the moon, as the moon circles or in its orbit, he moves in front of noisy places in the sky and quiet places in the sky. And it also moves in and out from the Earth. Let me quick log N3XX here. And who else? Here's a guy that's copying. We'll call him. In addition to the moon moving in front of noisy and quiet parts of the sky as it goes around its orbit, the moon, as it orbits the Earth, moves in and out away from the Earth every month. And so if it were closest to the Earth and in the quietest part of the sky, in front of the quietest part of the sky, what we call degradation, which is shown in the right up here at the bottom of the astronomical data chart, it would be 0. It will be best in the next couple days, but we're losing 2.5 dB now compared to the theoretically best time to work 6 meter EME. On the higher bands, higher frequency bands, you don't have this huge amount of degradation from the background sky temperature. You still have the 2 dB moving as the Earth moves in, as the moon moves in and out away from the Earth. But things are quiet when you get up to 432 and 1296 and higher. So I have a PowerPoint presentation on my webpage you can go to about the current status of things on 6 meter EME, and you can see on that, if you were to watch that, I outline all the things that are challenging about 6 meter EME, and then all the advantages and the reasons that we want to work EME.
6 meter EME QSOs count for DXCC, correct?
They sure do. It's a long path contact. But I've worked over 160 stations just on 6 meter EME. And, you know, I've given out lots of rare DXCC to people on DXpeditions. I have been trying since 2007 to go to at least one rare DXCC per year. Excuse me, I've got to move the antenna a little bit here. And obviously in 2020, I didn't go anywhere. In 2019, I went to Bolivia and the Seychelles. And in the fall, I'm going to the Austral Islands and the Marquesas. So there are, especially in Europe, those are pretty rare on 6 meters. So people are very excited about those trips.
What do you use for a portable station?
My portable station, I use a single 8-element Yagi, which is called a 6M8GJ. It's made by M Squared. It was designed for these trips. Excuse me, I'm just logging N0TB into the log here.
You need a slower protocol so you don't have to log so frequently.
So I can see that says 6 meters EME in the bottom and Q65-60A, and my RC3 doesn't do that. Did you do any special settings? And this is N6NU, by the way. If you at the bottom of it says, yeah.
At the bottom of it, yours doesn't. I can't really see the bottom of my screen because of all this zoom stuff at the bottom of my screen. But if you look on my website, I've got a checklist for how to set up Q65 for 6 meter EME or for 2 meter EME, and that goes through the list and shows you examples of what my screen looks like when I have things properly set up.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Lance, earlier you were talking about the 60-second and 120-second variants. How can you tell whether someone's using one or the other, and do you have to be decoding the right one, or do they interoperate?
No, you have to have them. You have to have people using the right ones. So most of what we do is setting up schedules in advance or in real time using a chat page like the ON4KST EME chat page for 6 meter EME. I've slowed down the waterfall a little bit here, and so it'll show these sync traces more clearly now. So if you know, you're going to have to know too, if somebody, you know, for example, in some week stations, I may set up a 2-minute schedule with some low power station somewhere. And I can do that by email or whatever, but you know, it would all be specified in advance so that we would know, you know, what mode we're going to be operating.
Got it. Thank you.
And when if you go to my webpage, you can see what my portable station is. I list all the equipment on there. It's under, I think, equipment.htm, but I use the X6M8GJ. I've got a kilowatt solid state amplifier. I've been using little RTL USB plug-in SDRs for my receiver, but now I've got a pair of these AirSpy R2 receivers. So I'm going to take them along on my portable operations. I'm using it right now. I'm using an AirSpy. You can see how nice and flat my bandpass is. I don't have flatten on or anything else. This is just the way it looks from now. Why didn't that advance? It should have. Oh, it fell out of enable. I'm sorry. So K5NA was sending me Roger 28, so I need to reply with Rogers to him. So I'm doing that now. So the AirSpy SDR has a very, very nice flat band pass here. You can see it's very even, and I can receive stations all the way across the band. So, so that's what I use on my portable operations, whether they're portable grid activations on 6 meters or whether they're de-expeditions on EME.
Are you using any kind of specialized sound card, or just what's in the computer that you have?
I've got a EMU. Well, actually, for receiving, I'm not using a sound card at all. I'm using a virtual audio cable directly from my computer software, which is SDR Console, which is the computer program that receives the input from my AirSpy USB receiver. And the output, the audio output from that goes directly via a virtual audio cable into the WSJTX program. So in that sense, there is no audio cable. Now on the output, I'm using, excuse me here just a second. Golly, these people are just, they're piling up so fast and nicely in the log. On the output, I'll show you in my settings. I'm using the EMU sound card, which is a USB sound card, for the output to go to my K3, which is what I'm using right now for my transmitter. When I operate portable, I use a rig blaster and an FT857. And I just use this plain old sound card that's in my portable Dell laptop.
I have a 910 that I have right now. I'm playing with 432 EME, not 6 meter, but I have a 910 that I'm using, and I have one of the micro keyer external boxes that has the sound card in it. And I'm getting some heterodynes or some birdies in the spectrum, some vertical lines. Do I need to quell those down to get good decodes, or can I let them kind of ride and look for the signals around them?
I would think you'd be okay. You know, from what I've heard from people, it seems like this, if you're using Q65, it seems to be very, very good about spotting birdies and ignoring them. And so I wouldn't worry too much about that. But that's one of the reasons why I decided to, excuse me while I raise the antenna a little bit more here. It's one of the reasons why I decided to go with the SDR receiver, was because my band, you can see from the waterfall, there aren't any birdies.
Right, it's pretty clean.
and if I were to switch over to my K3, you'd see a couple birdies. And, you know, I like being able, when you're trying to look for a station that is so incredibly weak that it's totally inaudible, which all of these EME stations are, it's nice to be able to know that when you see something, it's a signal rather. I have been in situations where I've chased birdies, and tried to decode them and call them, and it just is a losing proposition. So
yeah, I think my micro keyer is actually, the box that's got the sound card in it is actually the thing that's generating the birdies. So
it may be. I know that's quite a complicated piece of equipment.
Lance, I have a 1296 related question for you.
Uh-oh.
This is Sandy, N1FSK. I have worked you many, many decades ago on 2 meters off the moon, but we're trying, some of us nor'easter guys are trying 432 and 1296. Would I be better off on JT65C or Q65 up there?
You'd be better off on Q65, but probably Q65C. I know KB7Q has been active last weekend from southwestern Arizona with his umbrella dish on 1296. And he was, I think he worked 11 stations on 1296 with Q65C. And he was very impressed with it. He did get on 6 meters, and he did make some tropo scatter contacts using Q65-30A, which has been very, very popular for just D-layer scatter contacts out to about 1,000 miles on 6 meters, which was one of the reasons that or one of the applications that they had in mind when it was developed, and it works great for that. And I worked him very, very easily on D-layer scatter too on 6 meters, but he was only like 940 miles from here, so it's it's like a slam dunk any time of day. People have been doing this for several months now, using Q65-30A on 6 meters for tropo scatter, and they find with a single Yagi and 100 or at least 100 watts, they can be working out to 1,000 miles between stations easily. But
thanks. I got
the advantage of using Q65 as opposed to JT65 is Q65 has a number of advantages. One of them is it's slightly more sensitive. Let me just see who that one was. It's HB9Q, and he's receiving me. Okay. It's more sensitive, number one. Number two, it's sending calls and unknown information, which is the signal report that you're getting from the other guy. And it's sending calls with every sequence. So unlike JT65, which had 2 tones for Roger and 2 tones for RO and 2 tones for 73, and you had to recognize what frequency they were on for who that station was that was sending you that information. Here, I mean, all the information is sent with every transmission. So you can't get confused about who's sending what. Like all the stations that I'm working, I've clearly got, there's 73s from K5NA, and HB9Q is sending me -21 reports, and it's easy to tell who's sending what to whom.
Thanks. I'm an old CW guy, and I don't know. I've run a lot of FT8 in the last couple years, so I am used to WSJT. So we're excited to try a new band and get back in EME after 25 years of hanging it up.
Well, you know, that. Oh, here we've got a log HB9Q here. That's one of the reasons Joe Taylor got back into this thing after being out of EME for a long time. He came back into it in the early around 2002 and said, gee whiz, you know, there's a lot. I've learned a lot in my radio astronomy Nobel Prize work that, you know, we could really do a lot better in listening and decoding and copying these very, very weak signals. And so he came up and developed these digital modes that are very, very sensitive, these weak signal modes. And you know, bless his heart, I mean, we're only doing this right now because of Joe Taylor and his crew of people that have helped with it. Well, now there's a single Yagi station in Hungary who's copying, so we'll see if we can work him too. You know, I think one of the biggest impacts that his weak signal work has been on 6 meters, because the signals are so weak. When the first contact was made back in 1972, it was done on CW, and I have information on that in my Zoom presentation on my website about the status of 6 meter EME right now. But each antenna, each had a kilowatt, and each antenna on each end of the conversation, of the contact, had 8 6-element Yagis. So they both had 8 Yagi arrays, and they both were beaming at moonrise. So they both had the extra 6 dB from ground gain on both receive and transmit. That's what it took 50 years ago. And we have, I mean, we don't have, nobody has stations like that anymore. We're working single Yagi stations now. In fact, you know, where did I put him? Oh, he's up here. He moved. And the computer, the program followed him when he moved. We're working single Yagi stations now on 6 meter EME because of all this digital programming that K1JT and crew did. Along the same lines, while we're talking about it, I have to say with great sadness, I have to report that Joe W7GJ, who was on one end of the first 6 meter EME contact back on August 30th, 1972, passed away this afternoon. So we're losing a lot of the VHF pioneers these days.
Hey, Lance, I noticed that when you're going to I don't know if this is endemic to Q65, when you go into a transmit, you start sending a 73, and then you go, you know what, I want to work this other guy, and then you like double click, and then it puts you back on TX 2 or 3, whatever it is, with the other guy. About how far into the sequence do you get to, you know, like before you're locked into, okay, I'm just sending the 73?
I'm not sure exactly. You know, mostly what I've been doing is I've been choosing the message for the next transmit sequence. when I click a button here, you can see there's a little message that pops up that says, send this message in next TX interval. If I wanted to change it right now and force it to start transmitting this, I would press this button over here under the now column, and I could force it to change. And I'm not sure the exact answer to your question, but I think as long as I'm within like 10 or 12 seconds, maybe even 15 seconds, I can change the message, and there'll be enough there probably for the guy to decode. It'll give him like over 30 seconds. But we found from the testing on 6-meter EME, which was done with both the 60-second version and the 30-second version, boy, it's tough. I mean, you basically, in theory, you lose, 3 dB by moving to 30 seconds instead of 60 seconds. So, and when signals are as weak as they are, that makes a big difference. Here, look at when HA2NP sent me Rogers. His signal was minus 30. Now the background noise is about minus 32. So obviously I couldn't afford to lose 3 dB with him by going to 30 seconds, or it really helps to have the full well, it's not really 60 seconds, it's like 50 seconds sequence. So we try to keep up with it and just use the full sequences. But, there are times, if you have a slow computer or you're trying to decode multiple people along the way here, say I'm seeing spikes or traces or whatever, and I decide after a transmission has started, like right now I'm calling CQ, but if I decide like 10 seconds later, oh, I'm decoding this guy here, and I can just force it to respond to him by clicking one of these buttons over here. I hope that answered your question anyway, as best as I could.
Yeah, and I guess the other, you actually answered another question I had, was about what's the lowest and also the highest signal you can expect in Q65, when you do this moon thing. And it looks to me like about minus 30 is about where you start, is where you start seeing stuff. And then the highest I've seen is minus 17 so far.
Yeah, conditions aren't that great tonight. I mean, we get another couple dB later in the week when the moon is in front of a more quiet part of the sky. But I have actually decoded. This is one of the very, very powerful things about this new mode. Over here in the average decodes column, it's showing the ones that I'm receiving from people, right off. However, it's also showing averages, because I think I have it turned on. Let me just make sure here. Decode, enable averaging. So if it's listening here and decoding, not hearing anybody, like there might be somebody there, but we'll see. After 3 or 4 sequences, they may pop up over there in the average column because it's averaging all the little bits from each sequence. And I have seen minus 35. signals there, which obviously I would never be able to receive, you know, with JT65, and I would never, of course, I'd never hear them. I mean, to hear something, it's got to be stronger than about -18, and to decode CW, I need it to be. I don't have the best CW ears in the world, but I can do them if it's about -14. And sideband has to be stronger than -10, just to give you an idea about the dB differences that we're talking about here in the signals. So this is a very, very powerful program, and it's really earth-shaking in terms of a tool that we can use to work. Well, like I said, I mean, I just completed with a guy in Hungary who's got a single Yagi elevated and pointed at the moon. So he had no ground gain. It's kind of like me when I'm out on a de-expedition. So I think we've worked most of the people that are on. The Europeans have gone to bed now, I think. And I don't want to tie you guys up forever here. I know we've been at it for an hour already, but I don't want to short things either. If you have more questions or if there's any more information I can provide. This really wasn't meant to be a complete introduction to EME, which I think, as Scott said, I mean, is a whole another issue. But I did want to show you, this is what it looks like to make 6-meter EME contacts, or it could be any EME contacts. You know, this guy up here, whoever he is, I mean, I think he's going to wind up being shown up in the average here if we're patient for another couple times.
What do you think is the minimum viable output power and antenna configuration for EME for a newbie?
When people ask me that, I have a general rule of thumb, and my rule is that you need 14 dBd gain antenna and a kilowatt if you want to have what I call a real 6-meter EME station, and that's one that could work a similarly sized station. So you can come up with 14 dBd gain a number of ways. You can have a 14 dBd Yagi and aim it up in free space at the moon. And I have one of those. It's a 69-foot long 6M11 JKV Yagi from M Squared. That's a big antenna. Or you could use something like a 6M7GHV if you have good flat horizon and they're going to get good ground gain, and you can get the extra ground gain in certain lobes as the moon moves up through them or down through them on moon set. So you can come up with that 14 dB gain with or without the help of ground gain. And most people who have been working 6-meter EME around the world are horizon-only stations, simply because that's the most convenient thing, is they've got a horizontal antenna and they can point it at moonrise or moonset. But they're limited to the lobes on their moonrise and moonset. If you want to compare antenna gains, Lionel Edwards, VE7BQH, is a master at doing simulations of antennas, and he has done dozens and dozens and dozens of popular antennas for all the VHF and UHF bands that are Yagi antennas, and you can find comparison spreadsheet on my webpage showing, comparing all the differences of the gains for the different Yagis. And also Lionel has shown what the optimum stacking distances are and what kind of gain you can expect to get when you stack them at those distances. For tube antennas, for vertical antennas stacked sideways, for horizontal antennas stacked vertically, for 4-bay arrays. So that's a really very, very helpful tool. And that's on my webpage. I also have on my webpage, I have a little spreadsheet that I use for sighting a 4-bay array or a bigger one. If you're putting up 8 Yagis, for example, or 16, but most people use it for like 4, and it shows you what the clearance is. You tell it what the spacing is and where it's mounted on the boom of the Yagis, and it will show you what the clearance is from the ground, what the turning radius is at various elevation angles, and so on. So that's a really handy thing, and I've used that in planting my towers and making sure that they'll clear guy lines and trees and other things that are in the way. So there are lots of tools like that on my webpage.
Lance?
Yes.
This is Sandy again, N1FSK. Your basic program 35 years ago got me going. I ended up with 69 initials on 2 meters, but I wanted to thank you for writing that packet of code. I do monthly runs, bring them home from work, and when it was rainy, I always had a window at the moon. So thanks so much.
Sandy, those were the days, weren't they? I mean, we had friends that worked for a big company who had a computer, and they'd print out a year's worth of data for us, and we could look up the day and find out where the moon was. But now, it's been rewritten to run on Windows 10 on a laptop or on any kind of little PC, and you can run common moon windows with between 2 stations anywhere in the world. It just at the click of a finger. I mean, there's the information, and we don't have to have piles of paper here that somebody with big supercomputers ran for us. I mean, things have really, really changed.
Yeah, I know it's quite something, but I wanted to thank you. That was an awesome program, and I do like an inch thick of computer paper a month, I think. But getting back on 1296 is pretty thrilling. I have a 76 element loop Yagi with about 60 watts out. So we'll start with Dan HB9Q and see where it goes from there.
Yeah, there's some big dishes on 1296. So I'm sure you'll be working some people. Good luck.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Lance, I got a question for you. I was reading today. I copy a lot of EME websites. I bookmark quite a lot, especially from the Europe guys, Poland, Iceland, everything. Some fabulous information on there. And now the information I received today, they're saying like if it's 100% signal up, the reflection is only 6% return. And a lot of guys were saying they rather go to a dish antenna. So and then I guess it's much better as far as the beam antennas. Like you got the 4 beams, and I guess some guys are. I've seen some pretty sophisticated ones over in the UK that they send me the pictures, and these guys have massive dishes in their farmland, and it's a massive amount of concrete. It looks like the NASA space station. Have you seen those?
Yes, some people have some pretty big setups. That's for sure. It depends on the frequency that you're interested in operating. Dishes really excel. I mean, the gain depends on the ratio between the diameter and the wavelength. And so, when you start getting up in the 1296 range, I mean, it makes more sense without doubt to start going to a dish. And that's why KB7Q with his little umbrella 2.6 meter dish can just, make 11 contacts during a moon pass. At lower frequencies like 6 meters, I think that the dish would have to be about 85 feet in diameter, or maybe a little bit more, to be equivalent to my 4 Yagi array. So you can see that there aren't too many people who can put up an 85 foot dish in their backyard. That just isn't going to happen. And so for us on 6 meters and even on 2 meters, I mean, there are, I've worked people with dishes on 2 meters, but they've been like 50-foot dishes. I've got a 16 Yagi array on 2 meters, which is equivalent to probably an 85-foot dish on 2 meters. So Yagis are still much easier than building a 20-ton dish for the VHF frequencies. So there's a lot to be said for Yagis on the VHF bands, at least. But yes, as you go up in frequency, dishes are the way to go. And oh, wait a minute, I need to pay attention to what's going on here. I see there's a guy copying me here, K2ZT, and I've got to be answering him. So shame on me.
You mentioned CW too. I read today too that you should be sending about 12 to 15 words per minute, not 20 or 30, and then not less than 10, I believe. Is it got something to do with the atmosphere itself and receiving those signals properly?
I'm not sure exactly what it is. I know that as you go higher in frequency, you get things called libration fading. And it's like little craters and big craters, and things are adding and subtracting and putting things out of phase. And so the signals can have a lot of fast QSB on them. But I remember on 2 meters, I mean, we always tried to stay around 15 words per minute because the fading could be so rapid. I mean, I've already told you about 6 meters when signals just over a course of a second or two go from basically slightly audible to completely disappearing from detectability and then back again. So you can imagine what that would do to a CW. Trying to copy CW at that, you could just send the solid tone in it and it's gibberish. So we found that if you went too fast, the dots got lost, and if you go too slow, everything gets broken up, so you can't really tell what's going on. And notorious for sending slow CW was SM7BAE, bless his heart, may he rest in peace. He was also my first 6-meter EME contact on CW back in 1996 when I first got on 6 meters. You could tell immediately on 2 meters EME who was SM7BAE, because you'd hear this doot 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 da 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 dit dit dit, and in those days we had 2-minute sequences. Thank goodness, because it took him about that long to send his call sign. But he was the slowest CW sender that we had, and there were a lot of times when it was a lot better to be sending around 15, but sending faster than that was terrible, because the signals the dits would just disappear entirely.
Another question I got, as far as like beginners for us, whether it's 6 meters or 2 meters or 1296, what recommendations are on the receiving end, like as far as receivers?
Well, I'm not a good person to talk about that. You could email K2UYH, and he would be a good person to direct you to a good source of information on that. I know right now there have been amazing advances in preamplifiers. Even on 1296 now, you can get very, very low noise preamplifiers commercially made. And as long as you have a good low noise preamplifier in front of a good converter or a receiver like I have, this AirSpy receiver has a 3.5 dB noise figure, and it'll go up to something like 1.6 gigahertz. If I had a low noise preamp ahead of that for 1296 and I had an antenna, I'd probably use my AirSpy R2 receiver. I use them on 6 meter and on 2 meter EME. Of course, I've got a tower mounted preamp on 2 meters. So that you pretty much have to do that as you go up in frequency. On 6 meters, you don't really need a tower mounted preamplifier, but if you can keep most of the people on 6 meter EME around the world have a good low noise external preamplifier in the shack, and they keep their feed line below 1 dB loss, which is something that's quite feasible to do on 6 meters if you use good quality coax and keep the feed line fairly short. Most of us eventually wind up with heliacs or some sort of hard line. I started out with CATV 3/4 inch hard line because I had it and it was free. And as I got more into 6 meter EME, I found sources for 1 5/8 heliacs from TV stations that were upgrading to higher power and things like that. And so I wound up collecting heliacs. So now I've got 200 feet of 1 5/8 heliacs from the shack out to the antenna to the top of the tower. When I run portable operations, I use 50 to 75 feet of LMR 600 coax, which is portable. It can be used in portable situation, especially I start out with connected to the antenna with 50 feet of LMR 600 Ultraflex, which will bend around the rotator and the elevation mount and so on. And then if that's not long enough to reach where I have the station set up, I add another 25-foot piece of just regular LMR 600. And that, even with 100 feet of that, you're still under a dB of loss. So it's great to have that low loss ahead of my preamp.
I've heard of I've heard of like LR 1200 or 1600, something like that. But then, hey, real fast, you said that guy's colors were KC what again?
I'm sorry, I missed the question.
That gentleman that you said about the receivers, it says KC something YH.
K2 UYH.
K2 UYH, okay.
He's got a 28-foot dish, and he's very, very active on 432 and 1296 and higher. So he has a newsletter out for UHF EME, and I'm sure he could turn you on to the right people to contact.
Has anyone tried putting the rig right on the tower?
Well, at UHF, that's what they do.
I meant for 6 meters.
No, it doesn't really. It's really not necessary because you can use good feed line.
Okay.
And have low loss on 6 meters. I mean, it isn't like 1296 or something where the loss per 100 feet is like skyrocketing.
Right.
So you have to have at least your transverter up there, and you can run, the 28 megahertz IF or something like that up to your dish. But on 6 meters, nobody. There are a few stations that have tower mounted preamps on 6 meters, but almost everybody has low loss feed line and has the preamp in the shack on 6 meters.
Thanks.
Now, see, I'm going to call CQ now, so I'll press the TX6 button, and it's calling CQ.
Anyone ever have a sideband EME contact?
I've had sideband EME contacts on 2 meters, and I think on 6 meters, but they're really, really hard. On 1296, they have them all the time. These guys with the big dishes, 28 footers, I mean, they can have round tables on 1296 on sideband, but 6 meters, and to a lesser extent, 2 meters, are more challenging EME bands. And 6 meters especially. The signals are almost always very, very weak. I know when I operated a 2 meter DXpedition to the Bahamas in the early 80s, I had 4 18 element Yagis and an 8877 on the beach. And as the moon rose over the salt water, and I said, "Hello, moon," I could hear "Hello, moon" come back. So it is possible under the right conditions, to work sideband. But, I have people tell me on 6 meter EME, "Oh, you're so strong right now. You're CW quality." Well, that may be the case, that you're copying me right now. But because of the Faraday rotation and the polarity, it's almost never the case where I would be copying somebody at their peak signal at the same time. So that's why we do these digital contacts that give us so much more margin for making the contact. And to have a CW contact, I mean, there are stations out there like OH2 BC, who has 8 7-element Yagis. Yes, I'm sure I could work him, or I could at least hear his sideband during the optimum conditions when the polarity is perfectly lined up for me to receive him. On a perfect day of the month, when there's no geomagnetic aberrations, the KP index is low, the degradation is optimum, but he might not even hear me when I hear him. So, having a conversation or making a contact, it's really not a practical thing. It's more, if you want to contact somebody, it's a lot more practical to use a digital mode where you have a lot more leeway in how strong or weak the signals can be. And even so, you may have to wait for half an hour for the polarity to line up so you can move to the next message with them. So, like I said, I mean, 6 meters is a very challenging band for EME, but it's also very rewarding because it's probably the only way you can talk around the world. It was a week ago, I worked a 5-element Yagi when his moon was 30 degrees high in Australia, and he was only running 200 watts. So that was pretty neat, and especially if you need to work Australia for a new country, I mean, EME might be a way to do it. It's tough to do, though, if you live in a city and you have local noise. You have any kind of EME, except if you have a dish and you can point out up in the air and have no local noise at all. Mostly for 6 meter EME, you need a quiet location, and you also, if you're going to be horizon only, you have to have flat terrain without buildings on it in front of the antenna. Farmlands are great. Oceans are even better if you can beam out over an ocean or a lake. When I go on my portable DXpeditions, I always try to find a location where I can beam out over the ocean on moonrise or moonset, or sometimes both. I've found places where I can do that on both moonrise and moonset, because then I can really work the weak stations when I add ground gain to my little antenna. It's only 8 elements, so I consider it to be a substandard 6 meter EME station when I go out portable.
Hey, so Lance, like the guys from the Traverse City Club that's on the Zoom channel now, they're very close to Lake Michigan. So would that be an advantage?
If you can get an antenna set up on the shore of the lake, that would be perfect. And in fact, if you happen to be in a rare grid square, like, I don't know, maybe EN64 or 65 are rare grid squares on 6 meter, and you can beam to the west out over the lake, you might be able to work Moonbounce to work those guys in the West Coast that have a hard time reaching that. That distance is kind of in the donut for them for E-skip. It's in between 1 and 2 hops. So that would be an interesting thing, or it might even be interesting to just set up a schedule with a big gun in Japan, for example, if you haven't worked Japan on 6 meters. And there are some big 6 meter stations on 6 meter EME in Japan. So yeah, give it a try. I mean, you know what I've found in the, what I guess I've been on 6 meters for 25 years now. So I still consider myself a 6 meter newbie because I've been on 2 meters so much longer. But my rule of thumb is the only contact that you won't make is the one that you don't try. And for example, when ZL1RS was in Afghanistan and he had a homebrew 6 element beam on the roof of a building, which just happened to aim out over the flat roof of a building next to him that gave him roof gain, and I worked him. That was pretty amazing. And I never thought it would be possible. When YU-7EF built a 6 element beam out of found objects in Kathmandu and got on the air, and I had like a 5-minute common moon window with him. I said, well, I don't know. Let's try it. I mean, who knows? And during his moon set, my moon just came up over the mountain and I worked him just like that. So that's my only Nepal on 6 meter EME, or on 6 meters, period. So there are really fantastic things that can happen. I had never worked digital modes before, and I never thought much of them until 2002, when I got an email from ZS6WB in South Africa, and he said, wait a minute, here's a French station that's copying me.
Yeah,
right
I was
now.
going to give you a heads up. You got one more European who's holding on.
Yeah, golly, he's up late. And you'll see the frequency readout that I have is wrong. And that's the frequency that I'm on. I'm not using cat control on this particular setup with WSJTX because I just have my radio set to none on WSJTX, and I'm have my logging program set connected to the K3. So anyway, I'm sorry, I digressed, but I forgot where I was. But thank you for the tip about F1IXQ. He's another single Yagi. I think he's Horizon only station.
Lance, is there any online information about some of the nuances of running WSJT? Because some of us old CW guys, that's probably the biggest learning curve we have.
Yeah, and actually, I'll chime in as well. The guide that you have on your website about the setup of WSJT was really good. I appreciate that. But to Sandy's point, there's a lot of discussion online about what equipment to get or what equipment to use, but there's not a lot of information about step by step. This is what you do. Click here, click there, listen here, watch for this type of thing.
Yeah, sub-mode settings.
If you read, and I know it's hard to teach a ham to read, but if you read the manual for WSJTX, you know, they really have things well spelled out in there. And when you download the program, it comes with sample files. And in the quick start guide, which I have a link to in my step-by-step setup thing. It shows you, okay, here are sample files. And in fact, some of the sample files are ones that working 6-meter EME that I sent to Joe, where 4 people are calling me at once, and you can decode them all, and then you can click on them to work them and so on. Now, F1IXQ he wasn't strong enough to decode until I actually clicked on him, because there are a few more dB sensitivity in this decode window where I have the cursor, as opposed to just generally decoding across the band. So I'm glad that we picked him up, and but if you read the directions, it'll explain to you how to use the program and how it works, and lead you through the examples. And once you practice with the examples, you'll get a good feeling. I mean, he'll say, okay, so set it up this way and then click on this file. And this will be, and then when you click on that, you'll see that you will automatically move to the next. It'll advance automatically. So this is the same process now with Q65 that they have with FT8, where you can put call first and it'll automatically advance through the exchanges. There's almost any kind of radio you can make work with these digital modes. You just need an interface, a digital interface for it, and that's like my FT857 that I take out when I go on DXpeditions or portable grid activations and so on. I just got a West Mountain rig blaster, and it does everything for me. So I just connect it into the mic and into the audio output and so on. So it makes it pretty easy. There are certain user groups email groups on the internet and on Facebook where you can go to ask questions about WSJTX or how to set it up for using it with your radio. And if you were to join the WSJTX email list, I am just amazed at how patient and how knowledgeable these guys are in answering questions like the ones you're raising. Like I have a TR4 that I'm trying to connect up to. How do I do that? And there's always somebody who will answer your question for you, your specific question, and help you figure out how to hook it up. It's like I started to say before, I mean, I had never worked anything but I had worked the EME CW only, and I preferred to work like sideband. But I got this email in 2002 from ZS6WB, and he said, I'm in South Africa and I want to run a digital schedule with you. And I said, I don't do digital modes. And he said, oh, but you should, because this JT44 that K1JT just invented, we've been having lots of good luck with this on weak signals. And so I had just finished building this little homebrew computer interface, which I figured would be handy for automatically calling CQ from a CQ wave file out of my computer. And so I thought, well, you know, I'm set up for this. I might as well give it a try. And so let's run a schedule, Hal. Let's run a schedule. And so we ran a schedule on his moon set. He had a 7-element Yagi, and I think I only had my 11-element Yagi at the time. And I was elevated on his moon set, and gee, we worked right off. And I sent him an email and I said, Hal, I don't know about this digital stuff. This could be a one-off thing. Let's try a sched next weekend and see if we can duplicate it. So we ran a sched during his moonset next weekend, and I worked him with my antenna horizontal on the 3rd ground gain lobe on my end and on the 1st ground gain lobe on his end. And after that, I just said, well, okay, it's digital now on 6-meter EME from now on, because you know, I had run skeds with people. It took me 3 months to make my first CW contact on 6-meter EME. So I was a believer after that. So it's very, very powerful, and there are lots of other great parts to WSJTX that you can enjoy too if you can get on digital modes. The MSK 144 is just revolutionized meteor scatter. I mean, any morning there are enough random meteors to work out to 1,300 miles on using MSK 144. It's just amazing. You just get a little blip like that, and you've got both sets of calls. So there are a lot of great innovations in WSJTX. That's for sure. Does anybody spot anybody that I've been missing here?
I've been watching it.
You've been watching. It must be coming across okay then, if you're able to keep an eye on it for me.
Bill's your spotter, Lance.
You can see this red spike. This was is that still happening? Maybe I ought to send an extra 73 to F1IXQ.
I've been doing satellite for about 20 years, so I'm looking for a new challenge. I've got a 432 long boom, and that's going to be my first attempt on it. And then Sandy and I are putting together 1296 stations as well. I have the a long time ago they used to sell C-band dishes for RVers. They were the original umbrella dishes, and I have a couple of those. I think they're 1.5 meter or 1.8 meter. Yeah, they're unobtainium now, but I have the original collapsible foldable dish. So Sandy and I have been working on I've been working with W2 HRO on a patch feed and everything for that. So that's, but I want to cut my teeth on 432 first before I jump up to 1296.
Well, good luck. I've just stayed on VHF my whole time. I did a little bit of 432 for the satellite back in the 80s, but I was hoping to, that was before the internet, you know, so I was hoping maybe I could use the satellite to coordinate schedules on 2-meter Moonbounce, but we wound up doing that all on HF in those days.
To add to the QRP challenge here, my 20-foot long 1296 loop Yagi once ran indoors from the kitchen through the living room and out the window in an 8-story high-rise. So I just moved it sticking out 10 feet out the window for moonrise. But like you, I'm going to be doing portable. My XYL went crazy when she saw it for the first time.
That's amazing.
but it's all I can do now. I don't have the 34, 36-foot long johns and an 8877, you know, when I wasn't a cliff dweller, but we're excited to, there's 3 of us here in central Massachusetts that are attempting to do this.
Well, good luck. You'll find a lot of, there are a lot of people interested in EME these days. I mean, the activity has just grown. Even on 6 meters, which 20 years ago, nobody was on 6 meters. It was a band that you couldn't work EME on. And now with the digital innovations, I mean, it has opened up a whole nother door, and it's really made it a lot easier for people on all the VHF and UHF bands. It's a whole nother era. It's a great tool. And we've had so many innovations in the cell phone industry and in the computer industry and in the devices, and we've got low noise preamps now the whole way up into the gigahertz range, and you don't have to have these superconducting monstrosities like you did 50 years ago. I mean, it's really a lot of fun now. So I'm sure you'll have lots of support and lots of friends if you get on. Does anybody have any more questions? I hate to hold you all up. I really appreciate the opportunity to show you what 6 meter EME is about. And obviously you all have caught on really quickly because you're pointing out to me people that I'm missing while I'm talking to you.
Great presentation, Lance. Really, really helpful.
Yeah, this was a great opportunity, and I know I speak for Sandy. You know, I appreciate Cherryland giving us the opportunities, you know, us East Coasters, the opportunity to sit in on this. This is like a you know, once in a lifetime opportunity to kind of get the operational aspect here. So thank you very much for allowing us.
Thanks, Lance.
My thanks also to you guys for making it possible. And this is the first time I have tried to show anything happening in real time on 6 meter EME, and I really appreciate the opportunity to share more about 6 meter EME with you all. And I hope that some of you will get on and try to work me when I go to the Austral Islands and the Marquesa Islands on 6 meter EME in the fall.
Well, you know, that's a good goal to work for now, to get the station ready and cooking for exactly that situation. So,
and if you have too much noise in your location, set up a portable operation there by the lake, or by a lake, or by a farmer's field, or something like that. Like the griddy expeditions that I'm going to be doing in June. You know, go to a quiet place and set up a station, and I'll work you during your moon set because I've got elevation, and it would be great. I would love to take advantage of your ground gain during your moon set while I'm elevated.
Do you use a generator, Lance, or are you running some of this stuff off, you know, a hefty alternator?
When I operate portable, I tried, well, when I'm doing grid activations, I take a generator along.
Mm-hmm.
And here at home, of course, I just plug into the wall. When I go on de-expeditions, one of the requirements in where I go and where I set up, I've got to have electricity, because the only exception to that is when I went to Clipperton Island. You know, I took my own 3 kilowatt generator with me, but you know, I could ship it down and it was loaded on the ship, and you know, that was a whole different deal. But whenever I go out on an EMED expedition, I find a place that's got electricity and it's you know, got a secure place for me to set up the equipment where it won't get vandalized. And I try to find places that are somewhat safe, you know, and to get to, and that are possible for a single person to bring all the equipment to. You know, there's a list of about 10 things that I look for in a portable location, you know, and someplace that's very rural and very, very quiet. You know, if you look on my website, look at where I went in Palau, for example, at T8GJ. I mean, it was the northernmost part of the island and the narrowest part of the island on the top of the island. So I'd have beam out over the water on moonrise and moonset and be far from the noise in the city, where nobody has ever been possible to work any kind of 6-meter EME, even though I've always copied them when they set up at the VIP hotel in downtown Karor. They never hear anything except S5 noise. So that's why I decided I needed to go there and go someplace quiet so I could work people. There's a lot to be said for operating portable, I'll tell you, because you can find nice quiet places that and hear all kinds of things. And people are always amazed at how well I copy them. Of course, you know, I've got low loss feed line, I've got a good preamp, I've got this SDR receiver, which is, I mean, it's an ideal receiving setup. And on top of it, it's quiet where I go. So hopefully I'll be able to find some places like that in the future here too.
Thanks so much, Lance. We're really psyched here, so we appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you very much. Good luck to you all.
Thanks, Lance. This is Scott, W7GJ, and just wanted to say thank you so much for being able to be with us tonight and share your wisdom and the action of seeing you actually make live contacts. This is it's very inspiring for all of us. So we really appreciate you being here, and thank you very much from all of us here at the Cherryland Amateur Radio Club, and to all of our guests. We thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you for putting it on.
Yes, thank you all. Very nice.
Thank you, Scott.
That was priceless. That was priceless, Lance. Thank you very much.
Jerry, I'm glad you're in. Jerry, I'm glad you're still in.
Thanks to all the people who called me on the radio and for the demonstration.
Yeah, it'll be fun. My email lit up like a firecracker for the last week, so it'll be nice to have that back to normal. So it's really great to have everybody here. And Jerry, I didn't know you were still in here. I thought you had a phone call, but I wanted to say thank you to Jerry, W8RQM down in Livonia, for finding Lance and for getting this thing hooked up last September. We started working on this, and it's been a long time. We asked Lance, when is the moon going to be right? And he went, well, sometime in March. So here we are. So Jerry, thank you very much, and good luck in your surgery tomorrow. We'll be thinking about you. And again, thank you everyone for joining us tonight.
Yeah, then the other thing too is I just had a phone call I had to go up because my daughter-in-law is in the hospital. She's going to deliver our second grandchild, which is probably a baby girl. So she'll probably be delivering maybe in the next day or two, but that was my phone call for.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congrats. Very nice.
Hey, Lance, I want to send you. I sent something to Scott. there was a whole bunch of information that you had talked about. Some ham, and I don't know if it's from a club or individual, one of the guys you talk with, but he says that about the rotation antennas, the phasing, quite a number of things that he had talked about in his website. I gotta send it to you and see. I know you know about it, but maybe the rest of the guys, we can forward it to them or so. But it's very, very informational.
Well, I'm not sure exactly what you're talking about, but there's a lot of information on my website too about, especially about 6 meters, but also applies to 2 meter EME and how to set things up. So you could look on the website and see. But there are a lot of people with a lot of who've documented a lot of ideas, and there are a lot of tricks out there. And my thought on it is that none of us are going to be able to live long enough to make all the mistakes ourselves. So it's much better to read about how to do everything from the mistakes other people have made. And believe me, I've made a lot, and so have a lot of other people, and they have figured out things, and it's best to share it.
Hey, one thing I want to share with you, like north of where like Scott lives in Traverse City, the other guys, there's a place about maybe 90 miles north of him. It's pretty close to Mackinac City, right by the Mackinac Bridge there. And it's where a lot of people from all over the world bring their telescopes. And I can't remember the name of it, but maybe Scott knows. And it's extremely quiet out there. It's a very, very dark area at night. And that would be a great place for you if you ever come to Michigan to set up your station right there, because it's right on the lake. And boy, it's dark and it's quiet. It is so quiet. You can't even hear anything from the city because it's about 10, 15 miles from the city. But I think Scott knows about that, and all the guys that are in the Traverse City Club know about that place. I just can't remember the name of it, but I'll forward to you just in case you ever decide to come to Michigan.
Well, thank you.
Oh, the dark part. But
we may just drive through Michigan in May when we go to the East Coast. I'm not sure.
No matter where you're going, Michigan is a detour, so you're always
Scott,
plenty of overlooking lakes. Yeah, Lance,
for a great job, Scott. Thank you.
Thanks to you.
I think it's amazing that you could see the screen clearly and so on. And I'm just amazed at how well you put the whole thing together.
It went well, and we did record it. And I think there's also a plan was to record it for YouTube. So as soon as we have those out, we'll let you know, so you can let those who weren't able to join us tonight or weren't able to stay the entire time have a chance to go back and look at it. And then you'll also see what a great job you did.
Thanks very much, Scott.